Shalom and welcome to another edition of Midrashing with More Adoniyahu. Today we're going to be dealing with the question, what is a day? What is a day? Not only what is a day, but we also learn by understanding what a day is, we also understand what the Sabbath is in terms of its reckoning, right? And we're also asking the question, are they reckoned differently? Because there are some, believe it or not, that do indeed reckon days differently. Okay? And so we want to seek to understand, are these things the same in terms of understanding their parameters? Okay, and so let's go to the scriptures. Let's go to the scriptures. All right, Genesis 1:14 through 19 says, "And Elohim said, Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens, to separate the day from the night, and to let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens, to give light on the earth. And it came to be also. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And Elohim set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the fourth day." So if we want to know when or how or with what we are to reckon or even understand any kind of calendar, these verses are the beginning components that we need to understand the issue. Okay, we understand that according to this verse here, we need these lights that he made to separate the day from the night, right? The lights separate the day from the night. And they're also signs and appointed times for days, right? We're going to talk about years in a later issue, but today we're talking about days, right? So let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give their light. And so these lights in the sky, whether we're talking about those greater light, that greater light, or that lesser light, being the sun and the moon, right? The sun is the greater, the moon is the lesser. We look at these things according to this verse that we see over here, that rule and separate. Okay, there are certain roles and tasks that both the sun and the moon are engaged in that ruling or governing the parameters of a day. Okay, but not only does it have authority over the distinction or duration or the quality or quantity of a day, they also stand as markers or signs to signal the day and night respectively. Okay, so when we look at the sun and the moon, the way in which it rules and separates is by being a marker, is by being the distinguisher, right? We have day with sunlight, and we have night with the absence of sunlight. Okay, but let's look further. Let's look into this, right? And because we want to talk about a day. And so if we want to talk about a day, we have to talk about Yom. Yom. Okay, so the Hebrew for day is Yom. All right, And so the word yom, according to the Strong's, it has the meaning of to be hot. And so one of the purposes that we want to show by looking at some of these verses that I'm about to pull up is that the word yom must mean more than just the hot part of the day. It must. And the way that we know that is by viewing it in the context of Scripture, right? This word that is translated as day, is very interesting. It could mean many things, and we're going to look and see at some of the things that it does mean. If we look at Genesis 3:8, it says, "And they heard the voice of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim amongst the trees of the garden." And so when we see over here, there is a cool of the day. Okay, so there is a cool of the day. It's interesting because if we thought about the day as only like the hot part, how would we have a cool of the day? If we look at Genesis 18:1, it says, "And Yahweh appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent of the door in the heat of the day." And so if we look at this word over here and it means the hot part, and that's what it means, all I had to say was, "And he sat in the tent of the door in the day," in the hot part. That's all it had to say, if that's the only way we were able to look at this word yom. But as I said, we must deal with the context of how it's used in order to fully understand, this word yom. Okay. Genesis 27:2 says, "And he said, Behold, now I am old. I know not the day of my death." Interesting. When we look at this over here, it says the day of my death. Now, again, when we look at this word, the way it is used, and it's talking about the day of my death, that right there is not using it in the way that we see how the word is literally defined in terms of the hot part of the day. In this instance, when it says the day, it's kind of giving you this broad time period, right? That's doesn't necessarily have to do with night and day per se, or a calendar day, or what have you. It's just kind of this time period, right? I am old. I know not the time of my death, it could say right there. All right. And Genesis 29:7 says, "And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water you the sheep and go and feed them." And then over here, high day is kind of a point of the day, maybe dealing with the position of the sun. But I believe that it's speaking more of time here as opposed to like heat. Okay, so we're just able to see these different ways that yom is used in the context of Scripture. Okay, and lastly, we want to look at yom according to Brown Driver Briggs, where he agrees with what we just were saying in terms of yom is used to speak of a day. It's used to speak of time. It's used to speak of year, right? It's used to speak of a day as opposed to being something that's opposed to night, or it's thinking it's used as day in regards to a 24-hour period, right? To complete a whole calendar day. And it's also, as we see in Genesis chapter 1, it's defined by evening and morning, right? And so, there's different ways. There's different ways yom is translated. The light is called yom, or day, right? And this is obviously the light part of the day. But the whole period is referred to as day. The whole calendar day period. The whole, the totality of a calendar day. And also there are various parts or times of a day. And so we have to take all these things into account when we think about day. Okay, so also there is the question of when does a day begin, right? Which is important as it relates to other things that we'll continue to get into. But the thing that kind of helps us to move in that into that direction is to go into this definition that we see over in the BDB, where it is using evening and morning to encapsulate the entirety of a day, right? Where it says, and there was evening and there was morning the day. Okay? And there came to be evening and there came to be morning one day. All right, so let's look at this a little bit at a time here and deal with evening. All right, so evening, the Hebrew word is erev. Erev, a masculine noun referring to evening, dusk, night. It is used consistently to indicate the close of the day, okay, which is a very important point when we deal with understanding when a day begins, because when one day ends, the next day begins. And I'm saying calendar. When one calendar day ends, the next calendar day begins. These things happen simultaneously. So if we're talking about the idea of the closing of the day, we're also speaking about the opening of the next day. All right. And so this word erev, its root is arav, which means it has the idea of covering with texture. In the case of our erev, the texture that's covering something here is darkness, right? Because at erev, the light is dissipating, the light is going away, and the darkness is what remains. And so this word arav here, it has an identical, it's identical, it says here, with this, which has the idea of to intermix, right, or to mingle. And so when we think about what's happening at erev, is this mixture of light and dark. Okay, it's the point in time when the light is going beneath the horizon and the sky is being covered with darkness, right? That period of time when there is a intermix of light and darkness. Okay, and we have evening, right? And then we have morning, right? So morning is boker. Boker, properly dawn as the breaking of day, right? Breaking of the day part. The sun begins to break through the horizon, okay, at Boker, right? Morning. All right. Bakar, which is to plow or to break forth. And we think about, plowing or breaking forth. This is what the sun is doing at what is translated as morning in the scripture. All right. So both Erev and Boker are these times of a mixture of light and darkness, whether it's coming, that is the light, or going, leading up to night or day, respectively. Okay, so Erev is the thing that leads into night. Okay, and Boker is the thing that leads into day. Right, and both of these things are times when we look in the sky, unless we know was what time it is. If we just was to see a snapshot and we wasn't able to see which way the sun was going, whether it's going or coming, these things both look exactly the same. Okay, this picture that I have on the screen, I don't know if it's a sunrise or a sunset because it's just a picture here. But the idea is that both of these times are this mixture of light. Okay, because that's what we have at Erev and Boker, and both of these times again lead us into night or day. And so throughout the creation week, there are things that are implied. What are we saying here? Genesis 1:3-5. And Elohim said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. We are forced to assume, not only in verse 5, verse we just looked at, but also in verses 8, 13, 19, 23, and 31, when it says evening and morning, night and day are included in the components of a whole calendar day. We're forced to assume this because when we look over here in this scripture over here where it tells us that light is called day and dark is called night, it don't talk to us about night and day in that way in terms of the designation light and darkness, light and darkness, day and night. It doesn't talk to us about this anymore. It only says evening and morning, which again are these the predecessors of night and the predecessor of day, whether we're talking about evening preceding night or morning preceding day. And so when we look at these verses, that when it says, and there was evening and morning was the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, it forces us to assume that the thing which comes after is included, because it don't say it. Okay, and then we have to think about this, because the scriptures don't explicitly say, what's going on every time it says, and there's evening and morning. It causes us to have to look back at what it already told us, so that as we move forward, we can take what is already been told to us and use that in our comprehension of things. So when it says there was evening and morning, we're able to safely assume In fact, the scriptures force us to assume that when it says there was evening, night come after that, and then there was morning, day comes after that, and then that is the fullness of a complete day. So, does Genesis 2 and 3 cause us to assume anything in regards to the components of a calendar day? Let's see. Genesis 2 through 3. And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work, which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work, which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his works, which Elohim created and made. And so the question is answered. Yes, yes, yes. A resounding yes does Genesis 2 through 3 cause us to assume something in regards to the components of the calendar day. Let's look at it. If it says over here, and on the seventh day, if we're saying that there is a seventh day, then there has to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th day, right? And whatever it was that compiled together, whatever things were compiled together in order to create day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, are the same things that come together in order to make a day 7, right? If we see this number 7 here, we're forced to assume that before 7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so even though it doesn't say, and there was morning and there was evening, the seventh day, is telling us that when we see there is a seventh day, because how do we get to the seventh day? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, what are we forced to assume? We're forced to assume that the Shabbat, the seventh day, is a calendar day like unto the days 1 through 6. It contains an Erev. It contains a Boker. It contains a night, because night precedes, Erev precedes the night. It precedes, it contains a day, because Boker precedes the day, right? This is how it got to be at the seventh day in the first place, right? We don't have to do any type of, fanciful things in order to get this understanding. Simply by understanding that this is the seventh day in the cycle of days helps us to understand that whatever components were used in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the same components that helped us to get up to number 7. Evening starts a day. Evening starts a day, right? Evening starts a day, just like back in the definition where it told us that evening is the close of a day. If the day closes, if the one part closes, then the next part is opening. Okay? And this is not only true for a regular calendar day, but also for the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is the 7th calendar day. Let's look at some scriptures. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month, at even. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eats that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Okay, so look at this verse over here. Understanding that unleavened bread, that's my abbreviation, unleavened bread is from Abib 15 through Abib 21. But from the scripture that we just read, it said from the 14th at even. So from the 14th at even until the 21st at even is how many calendar whole days? How many calendar whole days is it? Well, we could count them up right over here. So we say the 14th day at even. This is when the Passover sacrifice was. At this time, they cooked it. They killed it. They put the blood on the doorpost because at midnight right over here is when the death angel was coming. And so if we say evening starts at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, the 14th at even to the 21st at even is 7 days. 7 days. Okay, and the scripture calls it 7 days, right? It told you the 14th at even until the 21st day at even. This is 7 days. And so when we look at this over here, again, the 14 is not incorporated in this. It's not incorporated in the count. It's not in the count because if we counted it, it would be more than 7 days, right? It would be more than 7 days. So again, when we look at this over here, we have 7 days that start at the evening and it ends at the evening, right? And then we get all the way up till 7 days, right? And so we see an example in the scripture where it goes from even to even, start to finish, and it counts for us 7 days. And it's pretty clear. Another example that we can see inside of scripture is the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement. Okay, so it says in Leviticus 23, 26 through 32. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a Day of Atonement. Okay, let's stop right there because it's telling us the Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month. That's when it is, right? And so the 10th day of the 7th month is when we're supposed to observe the Day of Atonement. It just told us, right? It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh, and you shall do no work in that same day. For it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. For whatever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that does any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. He shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, a Shabbat, Shabbaton, and you shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month at even. From even to even shall you celebrate your Sabbath. Okay, this is very important as it relates to the holy days, right? None of the other holy days are actually referred to as Shabbat in Hebrew. Let's look at this. There are no, and then you could go back and check it out. It is, as it relates to the holy days, none of the other high days are actually referred to as Shabbat in Hebrew. The Torah takes it a step further and refers to this day as Shabbat Shabbaton, where it says Sabbath of rest in the Hebrew. That is Shabbat Shabbaton. Now guess what the exception to this is. The only other day that's called Shabbat Shabbaton, the weekly Sabbath. The Shabbat and the Day of Atonement are on equal footing, synonymous with each other, except for the added mandate of afflicting your souls that connects us, that's connected with the Day of Atonement. And so when we think about Shabbat and when we think about the Day of Atonement, these days are identical. And just like the Day of Atonement starts on the evening and it ends at the evening, the same thing is true with the weekly Sabbath. These things are identical with each other, not just because they are both Sabbaths, but because they both are a whole calendar day. Okay? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter that Shabbat, Shabbaton, only refers to the Day of Atonement and the weekly Sabbath. Okay? That's an extra added fact that you can put in your mental Rolodex. The main point over here is that the Day of Atonement is a whole calendar day, just like the Sabbath is a whole calendar day that begins at even and that ends at even. Let's look at some more scriptures. Nehemiah 13:14 through 21. Remember me, O my Elohim, concerning this, and wipe not out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my Elohim, and for the offices thereof. In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said unto them, what evil thing is this that you do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and did not our Elohim bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet you bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants sat I at the gates, that there should be no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge you about the wall? If you do so again, I will lay my hands on you. From that time forth, they came no more on the Sabbath. If we look over here, that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, that's when he shut it down. That's when it started to be shut down. That from that point on, you are forbidden now to sit up here and do all of this profaning of the Sabbath, right? So they could have profaned it in this dark part as it began to be dark before the Sabbath, right? And so we have to understand that in Nehemiah's time, when we look over here, according to what the scriptures is telling us, this is how they reckon the Sabbath. They reckoned it as the 6th day was ending and the 7th day was beginning at evening time. Let's look at some historical evidence, right? Because not only do we see that the scriptures are actually telling us how a day is, when the Sabbath is, and when Israel kept it, but also Josephus tells us also, right, who was a contemporary of Yeshua and is able to tell us about the things that they did in the time of Yeshua. Okay, and it says, and anyone may hence learn how very great piety we exercise towards Elohim, and the observance of his laws, since the priests were not at all hindered from their sacred ministrations by their fear during this siege. Okay, so the priests were able to do the things that they normally did according to their observance of their laws, despite the fact that they had these foreign entities ruling over them, right? But did still twice a day in the morning and about the 9th hour offer their sacrifices on the altar. The 9th hour is the time of the evening sacrifice. There was a morning and an evening offering. The 9th hour is the time of the evening offering. Okay. The temple, its ministry and service by Alfred Edersheim, a historian who also is speaking of Israel at the time of in Yeshua's times. Okay, so the week was divided into 7 days, of which, however, only the 7th Sabbath, a name assigned to it, the rest being merely noted by numerals, right? Every day was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, except for the 7th day. They called it the Sabbath. The day was computed from sunset to sunset, or rather to the appearance of the first 3 stars with which a new day commenced. Okay, this is how they reckon the days. From sundown to sundown, sunset to sunset. Before the Babylonish captivity, it was divided into morning, midday, evening, and night. There were more divisions of the day, but it didn't change how the day was reckoned. But during the residence in Babylon, the Hebrews adopted the division of the day into 12 hours, whose duration varied with the length of the day. So again, it talks about what came out of Babylon, but that wasn't this. What came out of Babylon was the dividing up of the day, right? But this is what they did from sunset to sunset. Okay, Antiquities of the Jews is Josephus again. That the Jews have liberty to make use of their own customs, according to the law of their forefathers, as they made us of them under Hyrcanus, the high priest of the Almighty Elohim, and that their sacred money be not touched, but be sent to Jerusalem, and that it be committed to the care of the receivers at Jerusalem, and that they be not obliged to go before any judge on the Sabbath day, nor on the day of preparation to it after the 9th hour. So on the 6th day, after the 9th hour, they wouldn't be called into court because they didn't want the Jews to have to break their Sabbath, which started at evening time. Okay, this is very important because the other people, they didn't reckon their days in that way. But as a courtesy to Israel, they honored Israel in that way. And we see this in the history based on what we've seen, based on what the scripture is telling us about these transition points, about the composition of a day, right? About when a Sabbath starts, right? We have the answers. What is a day? What is a day? A day is evening, nighttime, morning, daytime, in that order. That's what a day is. That's what we see the scriptures tell us, right? What is a Sabbath? Evening, nighttime, morning, daytime, in that order. Okay? Are they reckoned differently? No, they're not reckoned differently. They're reckoned the same because a Shabbat is a calendar day. It's the 7th calendar day in a week. Okay, and we see examples of this. We're able to understand these things if we're able to look at the scriptures, and also not only look at the scriptures, but also see how it is that the people carried out the scriptures, most importantly in the time of Yeshua. If it's good enough for Yeshua, that's all I need.